Hello everyone, this is Zeeebo and welcome to today's Brown Dust 2 video. So before I begin today's video, just a disclaimer, I'm back at home for a bit, so I have my usual setup, my webcam as well as my mic to record properly. But in the coming few days, I'll be traveling again. So as I stated in my community post, it'll be quite a busy month for me in terms of commitments as well as traveling and some birthday celebrations. So I won't be producing this sort of recorded video as much for this month only, right? So don't panic. I'm not like skiving. It's because I don't have the proper setups to record properly. So if you guys see some text to speech for this month itself, that's because I want to produce the video, but I don't have proper setup, so I have to resort to like sort of a devolved form to present the information to you guys. So that's that disclaimer done. Let's move on. So for today's video of Brown Dust, I'm going to do a simple discussion video to talk about two skill set or abilities that have been nerfed tremendously in Brown Dust 2 itself, and they are none other than our dear Revival, so Revive skill. So there's a few units affected. We have our dear Leclerc, we have Helena, the base form, we have some Maze Revival. So these skills have been nerfed, and the other skill set that has been nerfed is none other than the healing ability. So one of my favorite healers over here, Julie, she's a pure healer. She got nerfed, I'll say, quite massively after the patch itself. So in case you guys haven't been following what's going on in the game itself, recently the game changed out the cost to sleep at the inn. So sleeping at the inn results in two things. So number one, you can recover HP of your units more easily at a much lower cost. And number two, sleeping also allows you to revive your unit. So this means that these two skills, right, revive as well as heal, dropped a lot in terms of value. So previously, the cost of healing up your unit, right, at the inn itself easily cost you thousands or even 10 to 20,000 gold per night, per rest, and it's very costly. So for myself, right, so let's talk about the healer part first. So for myself, I actually train up Julie because she is one of the easiest unit to get to +5 for her skill. So as you guys can see, at this set of equipment, she's able to heal, I'll say, like a decent amount over time. And that's very helpful in terms of cutting costs because her skill heals the whole team. So all your units that are taking damage, they're getting healed up slowly. And this allows you to save on your goal for healing at the inn itself. But because of the recent change, I'll say that this ability or pure healing as a whole kind of fell off, because healing in the first place, let's talk about the game modes, right? So if you talk about healing in the first place, we go to your normal storyline. In the easier storylines, you don't actually need to use heal because the units don't hit that hard yet, right? You only need to start maybe using healing when you are going into harder difficulty dungeons, like maybe hard mode for the later chapters or very hard mode for the earlier chapters itself. So these are the chapters that probably needs more healing, because at level 1 normal mode, if your team is strong enough, they're not dying, you don't need to use heal nor revives. And that's why, like, personally, in terms of usage for PvE, they are, I'll say, good for the early to mid game, because for the late game, at least at where I am, at the hard and very hard stages, the monsters or the bosses are easily 1 to 2 shotting my units. So such a small heal over like a long turn of 6 turns or even 4 turns for other units is not gonna be enough to keep them healthy. So in this sense, healers, like, how do I put it, like, the utility of a healer is just not as good. And with inn being such a cheat option right now, what you can easily do, like for myself, right, I use the dash ability and the magic circle ability a lot. So my magic circle ability is at expert, right? It costs me 5 ability pills. This allows me to teleport from the battlefront back into the town, go into the inn, heal up at a very cheap cost, and then teleport back into the exact spot where I come from. So the overall cost is really cheap and is really convenient as well. Another way you can heal up at an inn in a faster manner is park your character in an inn in one of the story chapters, right? Go explore in other chapters and then change back to that chapter where you're resting in the inn whenever you need the heal up, and then go back to the previous chapter. So that is where you go back to the exact same spot where you last loaded. So that's one way I learned recently as well, which is amazing in terms of efficiency as well as keeping your units healthy at a lower cost. So that's why healing has fallen tremendously. And on top of that, right, like, healing is a thing that takes up at least 1 slot from the team. So if I'm running a pure healer like Judy, so let's take a look at the collection itself. Personally, I'll say pure healers are a thing of a past for the game right now, because number one, healing is really not as efficient as it used to be unless they buff healing. So this thing I could easily get slapped in the face if the developers decides to buff the healer unit. But right now, honestly speaking, pure healer units like Julie, right, pure healer units like Liziane or Lizen or Liziane, they are not that good, because all they do is just heal in your team, right? For her case, she still has a DOT debuff removal, but for Julie's case, it's pure healing. So this sort of pure healer units, they're not as good, right? Another healer unit in the pool is our dear kind student Same, so I use her a lot as well. But for Same's case, right, not only does she provide a heal, she provide a buff to the physical attack and the magical attack. So she's a hybrid healer with a little bit of utility inbuilt in her. So personally, I'm still using her, and I think she's amazing because at +5, she's able to buff, I'll say like 50% of attack, which is quite substantial in terms of certain content pushing or even yourself dealing more damage. So let's go into her costume. So I have her at +5 over here. So it's 50% of attack and magical attack for 2 turns. So this makes her really flexible. And the latest healer unit we have in the pool is none other than the U unit, Helena, right? B rank idol Helena over here. Go down to her. So these are, I'll say, like the healer units in the pool. And personally, I think the only 2 healers right now that are usable to a certain extent will be Helena, obviously, because she increases her own magical attack for the whole team as well, right? Heals allies based off 50% of her magical attack, so that is after the buff. So her heal is kind of substantial, and she also increases the crit rate of all units by 25%. So these numbers will also increase, probably a 50% and maybe a 40 or 35% crit rate increase, I'll say, or maybe slightly more turns for the buffs itself. So this unit itself is definitely the best healer right now, no doubt. And if you don't have her, I'll say like a more cheaper version will definitely be Same, which technically does the same thing but maybe lower numbers and smaller turns. So you got to actually use it more consistently, and she could be a little bit more SP hungry, even though the SP usage is only 1 once you max it out. So that's one thing to take note for this skill itself. So for the healing department in the game itself, I'll say pure healers, they are kind of out of time, because sleeping in the inn, it's so much cheaper and it's so much more convenient right now as well. And talking about healing, we have to talk about revival as well. So revival faced the same issue, because previously I was using a lot of revival and heal because they saved me a lot of gold. So the revival unit of choice for myself is Same, as you guys can see. So I use 20 ability pills to recover a fainted unit to 50% HP. So if you calculate by direct cost without any discount, 20 ability pills is easily like 1,000 gold itself. So it is a lot more expensive compared to sleeping in an inn, because right now to fully heal up your whole team, right, it doesn't even cost 500 gold. So revives cost, in retrospect, increased tremendously, because previously sleeping in an inn cost you 10,000 gold, whereas reviving and then cooking for a unit only cost maybe like 4,000 to 5,000 gold. So it is cheaper back then. But right now, with sleeping in an inn costing below 1,000, there's really no fight, because you can easily just abuse the chapter changing mechanic or teleporting mechanic to get your units back to town to heal up and then go back to the dungeons itself. So that's why I make this video, because I kind of want to explain to people why revive as well as heal has been nerfed tremendously in the game itself. Personally, I'll say healers in the game, they are still relevant, right? But as you guys can see, pure healers are not that good, because in Mirror War, if you are the attacker, you probably don't want a healer to go first because you're not getting the heal benefit immediately. And if you're going second, right, you want a unit that heals and provide a buff for your team. So units like Same or Helena, they are amazing choices. Whereas unit like Julie and Louisiana, yeah, they do heal up your team, but they don't offer much because they're not that tanky. You can't use them as a tank. And like they just serve a role of heal, and that's it. And most of these healer, right, the ones that I mentioned just now, Julie and Louisiana, they only have one form. So after they heal up, they are using the normal attack, which is kind of useless. So that's why in Mirror War, no way you can see them. For Evil Castle, to a certain extent, if you want to keep your team healthy, I think having a healer and revive in your team is not bad. But one thing you guys gotta take note in Evil Castle is if your unit die, after you revive the unit, you still can't use the unit. So revive is useless in Evil Castle in some sense, and healing is good, but if you can actually maximize the damage output by having like 1 buffer and 4 damage dealers, then you probably can survive pretty well as well on the manual mode if you position your unit. So in terms of healing, Evil Castle is not the place to go to. So the only place I could think of that healing will be relevant is probably the harder dungeons, where you have like units that can tank some hits and then slowly heal up with all these pure healers, which is getting more and more niche, right? Personally, I'll prefer to just teleport back, run to the inn, heal up, and then go back into battle fresh for my whole team. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Just sharing my personal opinion with regards to these two mechanics, which were my favorite, by the way. So as you guys can see, I have my dear Sami at 46 and I have my dear Julie at 45. So I've been just putting them in my team and then leveling them up by doing my dailies, clearing my farms, you know, doing all the various stuff. So it's kind of unfortunate that they have been massively nerfed in this patch itself, but it is what it is, right? The game is continuously evolving, new metas are coming, units that were not good are becoming better, and that's just amazing. With the release of more characters, with the release of future changes to the game, I'm super excited to see how the game changes. So there might be a time where healing and reviving could become the in thing again, right, in terms of cost cutting, but as it is, I think they are kind of out of time and out of meta. So that's my opinion for these two abilities, and thank you very much for watching. Do remember to like and subscribe in order to see more Brawl Stars 2 videos for this channel, and I'll see you guys again in my next video. Bye guys!